to the webinar series from the Cambridge Service Alliance. Today, Katarina Grieve and her team are going to present a research project supported by NIMOD. And the name of this project is Facilitating Co-Creation in Living Labs, the Joseph case study. Over, Katarina.
Thank you, Veronica. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katarina, and I'm going to present our research on facilitating co-creation in living labs. This study has been conducted with colleagues from University of Erlangen-Nuremberg. So let me give you an overview. First, I outline the problem industry faced with regards to new product and service development and link this to our research objective, which is to study how co-creation in living labs can be facilitated. Second, I will briefly present the research approach and design of our study. And third, introduce the case of Joseph's. Fourth, I will contrast the results from theory with practice and then present some 5 factors that are critical to the facilitation of co-creation in living labs. Finally, I will conclude this presentation with our findings and contributions of the study. Already 12 years ago, Prahlad and Ramaswamy pointed out that companies must escape the firm-centric view of the past and seek to co-create value with customers. The reason for this recommendation can be explained by a number of challenges business face today. For example, the high failure rates of new product and service innovations, which can be up to 80%. Also the increasing pressure to reduce time to market and cost of introducing new services and products. At the same time, we can also observe that there's a shift from passive consumers to active innovators. So customers want to be active, they want to contribute to new innovations. And for this reason, co-creation in living labs is gaining popularity. However, we also notice that many living labs have failed to fulfill expectations. And for this reason, we try to explore, identify, and analyze factors that are critical to the facilitation of co-creation in living labs with our research. Before I introduce the study in more detail, I would like to explain what I mean with co-creation and what is a living lab. So co-creation is really about the collective creativity that results in something which is not known in advance. And more specifically, we focus on customer co-creation, so customers that engage with companies to co-create value. So when I refer to customers, I speak about those individuals that innovate with a company. And on the other hand, we have living labs. So living labs are essentially defined in different ways, but they have a unique setup, they have a unique layout and purpose. So the focus of living labs is on open innovation and co-creation in real-life settings in order to test, prototype, validate idea products or services. And for the purpose of this study, we compared research about co-creation in living labs with a view of practitioners. So first, we conducted a rigorous systematic literature review, which led to the analysis of 278 academic papers. Next, to compare this with practice, we conducted several workshops, interviews, and observations with staff that is involved in operational, strategic, and research activities at a living lab. And last but not least, we also looked at the company's side and carried out a half-day workshop with companies that utilize living labs in order to co-create with their customers. And now I would like to introduce you to our case, Joseph's. So Joseph's is a living lab that's established about 2 years ago in the town center of Nuremberg in Germany. The living lab offers 5 co-creation spaces that are run under one theme and change every 3 months, where also the companies change every 3 months. The living lab is open to the public, so really is open to everyone that would like to engage in this process. And very important for Joseph's is actually the interactivity of the process, the fun, and that customer try out and touch different products, services, or ideas that are brought forward in this living lab setting. A typical co-creation process at Joseph's can be explained through 3 different phases, So first, Joseph is defining the research question together with the company. Then the research design and method will be decided on. So this is a collaborative process between the company and Joseph's to establish a research and a method that can be conducted in this living lab setting. In the second phase, Joseph creates a co-creation space in accordance to these project specifications. The start of the project is also the start of the theme world, where other 4 companies co-create with customers. In total, there are about 1,000 co-creators that deliver feedback to the company. And last but not least, in the final phase, qualitative as well as quantitative analysis is used in order to provide results and feedback to the companies that then can make changes in accordance to their experience at Joseph's. Overall, Joseph has about 3,000 visitors that come in and explore the living lab. So again, we wanted to know how this co-creation process can be facilitated in living labs. And first we explored the existing literature. So here you can see a table with 5 areas, and most co-creation elements that we looked at coming from literature, they talk about customer engagement, relationship management, and very few talk about the actual design layout of the living lab. And what's very interesting about it is the blue highlighted aspect of dialogue. So dialogue is mentioned by the literature, but also by Joseph's and the companies. So both parties coming from practice agree with the literature, saying dialogue is important to us. And as an example, a research team member at Joseph said, we figured out that these status quo emails are quite nice because even when you do not have been, or when you have not been there, you just get a short summary of the day, what happened there. Again, focusing on this aspect on dialogue and pointing out the importance to them as a research team. At the same time, the companies also identify dialogue as important, and a company founder and CEO who participated in one of our workshops said, an internal communication tool will help us to communicate effectively and carry on dialogue, which is key to this experience. So once again, coming from literature, we see one aspect, one element that is agreed on among living labs and companies that have participated in our study. The workshop with companies at Joseph's brought forward more elements these companies consider as important when co-creating value with customers. So let me give you one example. We have managing expectations and comfortable atmosphere that have been mentioned by Joseph's and the companies. For managing expectations, Joseph pointed out that you also have to communicate that the things which are displayed here, they might break. If they break, they are poorly designed. So actually expectation setting is important. And this is coming from a research team member again at Joseph's, really highlighting the fact that managing expectation is contributing towards the facilitation of co-creation. And at the same time, a business development manager says, I think what would be good from Joseph's side is to clearly describe the expectations to company representatives that would like to develop products here. It is not about the great amount of empirical data that you can rely on here, but based on our perspective, it is about identifying the problem. So both parties agree, both parties coming from practice agree on managing expectation and a comfortable atmosphere are factors that are really important to them. The workshop with companies at Joseph's also brought out more additional elements they consider as important. They don't have any additional elements that they see supported by any other party, but they focus, for instance, on sharing best practices. So company founder and CEO said again, from Joseph's side, documentation of best practice would be beneficial, whether this is contents-wise, links to other company projects or tools. that have been successful in other projects. The beauty is that you can create a knowledge base as time goes on, and hence added value can be created, which is based on best practices. Experience starts to build up and more potential to enable interactions become possible through documentation that is made available. So for companies, it's really important to have this information that goes beyond their own experience at Joseph's. And in summary, this table highlights the results derived through the literature review in yellow and the results from Joseph's in orange, and the insights from the company workshops in red. Grouped in 5 categories, we identified in total 41 elements that are critical to the facilitation of co-creation in living labs. You can notice that there's one element in blue, the dialogue, that is supported by theory, living lab and companies, and 2 further elements highlighted in green, where Joseph's and companies agree on. Integrating these different co-creation elements in one framework allows us to conclude that A, theory does not pay much attention to aspects relating to operating principle, design layout of a living lab, and its data collection approach. However, the literature discussed behavioral aspects, motivation, and incentives of the customer, which in turn is acknowledged by the living lab facilitator and company, but not really seen as critical. In contrast, Joseph's really strongly focus on operational goals, and their effort is put towards the relationship to the customer, as the customer is key to the co-creation process, and engaging with them benefits the firm. For similar reason, also emphasis is put on the data collection and design layout of the living lab. In contrast, the companies, they focus more on sharing of knowledge and best practices that go really beyond their own experience in the living lab, so that they can have additional learning outcomes from other projects. And more specifically, companies consider the relationship between them and Joseph's as important, but they spend less time or less thought on the relationship between Joseph's and the customer. However, what's important to note is that although the customer is the one involved in the co-creation process with the company, this is not really considered when the companies gave us feedback. And the operating principle of the living lab, again, plays a major role for the companies because it really outlines the concept and values of the living lab and how companies can engage with them. Also, the data collection approach is critical because this is a really unique method these companies can utilize in the living lab. So overall, what we could detect is that there's not much agreement between theory and practice with regards to how co-creation can be facilitated in living labs, which again highlights the need for further research in this domain. And finally, I would like to conclude and highlight the contributions of the study, which is first that we identify 41 elements that are grouped in 5 critical co-creation categories. And with that, we derive first insights into the operational activities and design structures that are implemented to facilitate co-creation. So this has not been developed in the literature so far. And living labs also gain deeper understandings on the factors that are relevant to consider when engaging in co-creation, and the same applies also to companies.